Hi, this is Sally and I have two of these chaises to do. My client has decided to go for what she calls an Oriental look. So the top is going to be in a neutral colour and the outsides are going to be done in a blue and grey toile. It should look really interesting when it's all finished. And I have to be very careful because I have to make them both match, but I can only do one at a time. So let's get on with it. As with all projects, I need to remove the bottom cloth and back tacking, piping, so that I can start working on the project. This is the front border, what would be considered the front border on a chair. It's just elongated. These staples here are all sticking out. Because I don't take the front border out, I don't usually have to worry about these staples. But in this case, I'm going to have to take all of these staples out. When I put the new border in, I'll just restaple everything all in one go. Because I don't know what they were thinking when they did this. In fact, none of these staples throughout all of this project are very well put in. Now I'm going to start working on here to remove this side panel. I have a metal piece of back tacking, which if I do this, will come up. Try to keep it as straight as you can because you want to reuse everything that you can from these projects. You don't want to just throw it away because it's replaceable. This is money that you're throwing out. So I'll put that to one side and reuse that. Again, this is reusable, so I'll carefully take this out too. I need to measure the depth of the front border. So I'm going to put it 1/2 inch over to all the way round. Comes to 14.5 inches there, so that's a good starting point. The fabric that I'm using has a really deep pattern, so I've actually cut lengths at 19.5 inches, and I'm thinking this pattern here should be at the base. So if I add an inch to the bottom, because it's quite deep, so I'll make it 15.5 instead of 14, and it might pull down a little bit further, it might not pull around quite far enough. This is going to be the center of the three pieces. And cut this to 15.5 inches all the way across. I'm only doing it to one of the pieces because the other two are going to be used partially for the side, and I don't want to cut those down to 15.5 inches, otherwise they'll be too short. I'm just going to cut this one all the way across here like this. For the pattern match sideways, I'm going to fold that over and see how close I can get it. So it's less than 1/4 inch, which is a bit of a bind but doable. I'll cut that back first because it seems to be quite tight on here. It might release those sides if I do it on both sides of the width of fabric. No, might not. Sometimes it does. I certainly don't want to be too close to where I'm sewing because I need enough turning for the seams. While I'm at it, I'll do this one too. There's like a hard ridge on the edge here that I don't like. With this, I'm going to line the fold here with my pin mark here. That's the halfway mark. Pull that out and straighten it along the top. Now to work out where everything finishes. This is where the piping is, so I'm just going to put a pin here. Then I know that my fabric has to at least come to that point and over. Move this down. I also want to make sure that the fabric goes around the back of the chair. You can see it's shaped, so I want the top to at least go round right on the edge there. That'll be fine. Stretch it out to the center here where the arm is, like that. And again, where that piping is, follow it down and put another pin in. So I know that both parts will cover where I need to. So then all I've got to do is fold the pins to the pins like that. And I'm just going to put a cut mark here. So when I pull the front border in, although this comes to here, the rest will come back further. And the same with here. I have that extra length here to work with and tuck into the back tacking here. I've unpinned it. All I'm going to do is pull this one over the top here like this to my cut mark. Make sure the bottoms are level. Cut this one along here. I don't want to do them together because they might twist. Pull that one back slightly, and again along this cut line. Pull everything in line and cut the second one. With my ruler running along the bottom edge, I'm just going to cut this back to 15.5 inches to match the middle panel on both sides. I did it this way because we're a little bit short of fabric, and I just want to make sure that all of the parts are cut out that need to be. Now know that I've got all of the border and both of the outside arms to this project. I don't have to worry about those. I'm just going to iron out the seams because I want them to be as flat as possible. Now something weird's happening here. When the fabric's heated, it moves. That sometimes happens, but it's not always a good sign. Let me get the other one done. This seems to split open a bit, which is the weave, because it doesn't do the same thing here. I've got various weaves going on in here, so one weave behaves differently to another. I've measured over 5/8 of an inch for the top here. Because it's a repeat pattern, all I need to do is just follow one pattern to the next. Makes life a lot easier then and steam it in. Find the pattern repeat here, giving it a slightly more generous seam allowance for the top, because the fabric goes up and down quite a bit, which is a bit irritating. It's just the way it was stretched when it was finished. So I just want to make sure everything is where it needs to be. If the seam allowance is too thin, it's really quite hard to keep a wonky line straight, but at least this way I should be able to manage it. This pattern here and this pattern here match. This pattern and the one over there don't quite match because it's underneath the seat cushion. Nobody's going to notice. You can see this goes up and down. It's quite zigzaggy, which is really annoying, but I'll do the best I can. I've got the pattern matches, but even with the pulling of this fabric and steaming it, it still kind of wrinkles up and down. Not much I can do about it until I sew it in, and when I pull it in, it will straighten out from the top down, so nothing really to worry about. The pin's the centre. There's my centre pin for the chair. I've put pins either way, so that shouldn't move. This is following the sewn seam here. I have put it upside down. Put that there, and then here, come round, pulling that also up to that line and to the back here. Put a pin right at the top here. Fold that down. I'm coming back to this corner. I'm going to make sure the two tops are together like that to form an angle. I'm going to pin from the top of there. Hold this even here. Pin along that angle like this. And I'm going to do it exactly the same on the other side. So it's nice and even. When I get to the end where it folds down slightly, I'm actually going to put a couple of pins coming down at that angle. Always double check everything before you move it. I'm going to move this pin from here. I don't want it in there. I might forget to move it later. Then unpin everything else. Because this is a little bit awkward, I am going to draw in the sew line from pin to pin like that. Then I'm going to get each pin like this and put it at right angles so that when I sew, I can easily pull them out or sew over them and they won't be damaging to my needle. I'm going to make sure that my outside edges here are even. I don't want one above the other. Slide that underneath, forward and back, just a couple of stitches, and then follow the line that I've drawn. Now I go from the outside edge in. I can move all of that now, because if this moves, it's going to move on the fold. And then I'm just going to twist it down slightly and reverse again just to finish that off. Before I get started, I'm actually going to cut these corners off, leaving a good 1/2 inch seam, if not more. I just don't need all that bulk in there. I'll do that on both sides. I'm going to put this on like I would do a normal front border of a chair. Fold that up like that, fold that back there as well. It just takes a little minute to get everything into place. Across the front, here into the corner, and all I'm going to do is pin it to that yellow cover. I just want it as even as possible, and along that seam, this one here, I'm going to pull this way slightly because this is where there's a little bit of a rise. Do that there, like that. And then I'm going to bring this into place like this. When I sew it, I'll just make sure that everything is going where it needs to go rather than where it thinks it needs to go. On this side, I can bring this over, pull that back, and make sure that that carries on in a straight line to here. Now I'll do the other side. I am going to pull this and this fabric out and put it underneath the foot. Take that out, straighten it up to the next pin and pop that down. Now I've left a good inch at the back. I'm not touching that just yet. Roll this fabric here in because this is quite
a firm fabric. It doesn't want to do things that I want it to do. Hold where the next pin is. With luck, this will go through. I won't do a forward and back because I'll be going over those stitches anyway. I think that's flat. And I'm sewing right on that edge where it's folded. Take this pin out. Again, just line everything up so it's straight. And sew. Now this is where my seam goes a little bit wonky, but hopefully it will keep in shape. The importance is to keep it as taut as you can, otherwise it will wander. When I get there, remove the pin and go to the next pin. It will go up slightly, so I'll pull that back. And I'll work my way into this corner here. When I get to the corner, go into that seam, needle down, foot up and twist all the fabric round, like I do any other time. Roll this side up, drop the foot, move the pin and work towards the next pin. Again, when you get to the corner, go over a few stitches, needle down, foot up and twist into place. Fold the next side up. I'm going to sew to this pin here, which I'm going to take out first. And the second pin, because that's where it rises up. And then after that, I'll just pull it straight to the next pin. If the line is a little bit wobbly under the seat cushion, nobody's ever going to know. This side's the easy side to put in, so I'm going to just pull this straight. I'm going to fold under about 1/2 inch, like that. When I get to the corner, reverse a couple of stitches to make sure that's secure. Lift the foot and twist. And continue folding about 1/2 inch underneath of the patterned fabric. Keep that as flat as you can. Put that down and then sew to the edge, because this is going to go under the arm of the chair. And reverse again. Going back to the first side, which I started a good inch in, fold that over my 1/2 inch like that all the way down and sew along my stitches into that corner. Reverse, just a few stitches and back. Wind it in by hand if you need to. Lift the foot and twist everything in place like that. Try to keep all of the fabrics as flat as you can and then sew it into position. If the top fabric's slightly off, it won't matter because it will be cut and it will settle itself out. Reverse when you get to the bottom. I have cut some dacron which I'm going to just lay on here. It is just going to be held into place by this, and it doesn't have to go across the whole thing. This is to fill out these corners just in case I didn't get them tight enough. Make sure that this fabric here comes out over the sides before pulling all of this into place. I'll pull the centre in. I don't need to mess around with the bottom here, so I'm going to put the piping on. It's level with the front here, like this. I'm going to pop that down for good measure for now. Cleared out most of the rubbish that was behind here, so I'm going to pull this in here and cut down towards that corner like that and pull that into place. I need it to be as even to here as possible. That looks about right. And again, I'll pop this on up level with the outside there. Pop this here to this side, and I'm just going to cut a little ways down. Pull this as hard as I can to the back here and line the next bit of the pattern up and secure that into place. Pull this back. What I'm probably going to have to do is to glue behind here, put that in and then put this round. I'll do that in a short while. In the meantime, I'm going to pull this back this way as hard as I can and in line. I'll adjust the dacron under here, but I really need this pulled as far back as I can so that I can start getting it in line here. If I don't pull it really hard back, then there'll be too much fabric going in here and I don't want that happening. Might take me a couple of times to get that where I want it. I am going to cut down from here into this corner, not too far in, and I'm going to make sure I do both bits of fabric. That's so that I can work this in better to go around, and this will come in here. So I'll put another like that, and that will push under the inside arm like that. I'm not going to pull this in until I've got that side done. I am pinning this on the front I'm not going to take it up very high, maybe just to about there, and then down into place here. It's got to be as level as you can. Then all I'm going to do is I'm going to fold the two pieces together like that and pin them into place where they join. And the reason you want it as level as possible, going up and down, is the more even that goes in, it's a lot easier to work out later. And then I'm going to come round this curve here, doing the same thing, just where the two pieces cross over, and make that turning as smoothly as I possibly can, and then the same along the top. So long as I've got about 1/4 of an inch for the piping to go in, that's all I worry about. I could put pleats in, but I don't think I will. I'll just let it pull in as it goes round, so it'll be slightly gathered if anything. Work my way to this side too. I'm doing this like a slip cover, and that's so that it can be pulled into place, and I'll use this as the pattern for the other side. I started putting the back in because I wanted this pattern here and this to follow all the way around, so it's the same height. One of the points I want to make is I'm going to put a cut here. That is to show where I start the piping, and I'm also going to put a pin here to show where the piping has to stop being sewn and left, because I need a piece of piping to go from here all the way down the side. I am going to cut up here, leaving 1/2 inch seam allowance up and round. Now here is where I want to stop sewing for the front of the arm. Bring that in here like that, and then on up and round like that. I know I made this a little bit close at the top. I'm still going to cut round. It's not as close as I thought it was going to be. Now you can see that I've got that shape. I will cut into here again, just like that, and then at each of these pins make a little mark like that. Do a couple of those and another one at the top. Now I need to make sure that all of these line up, especially when it goes round, because that is how I bring all of this into place. I'm going to just cut in there, and I'm going to leave this out. The other thing I'm going to do is this comes down slightly, and I'm going to just fold across here in a straight line and take that extra fabric off. I don't need it. No point in having too much on there. I'll take it there. It's a little bit extravagant, but it'll be fine. Pull that piece and cut it. Then my fabric is manageable size. I can take this one out because I don't want that. And this one here, I am going to pop exactly where I've taken it out, like that. Although I'm going to stop sewing around about here for the piping, I want to see where I'm going to be heading to. And I did cut these a little bit close, so I'm actually going to pop those on the other side too. It was just the angle I was cutting at that made it just a little bit tight. Here's the pattern. I'm going to put that face down like this. I don't even need to pin it, I just need to rest it on there. I'm just going to cut this out like this all the way around. And where there's clips, remember to take those out. Should be exactly the same. I've pre-measured the outside of the arm, which means that that would come here. Line this up here. Start more or less level with that. Before I start sewing, because I'm going straight into the round, I am going to cut the flange of this so that I can roll it around and it will go in nice and smoothly. Start sewing. By curling this round, you govern where your stitching is going to go. I usually do this piping on a diagonal, but I ended up doing it straight because I had lots of straight cuts of fabric and we were a little bit short, so I didn't want to risk not having enough fabric for this project. Carry on going around here. I'm pulling it into shape as I go. And as I come in here, I'll straighten it up and aim for that mark there. Cut this a little bit lower, open up the seam to just above that mark, cut that out, and I am going to come to that and then stop. I've just cut out the inside arm, both were facing each other, and I have all the cutouts, the shaping as close as I can to the original one that I cut. Line all of this up. Now this piece of fabric that went around the piping, I'm going to pull out to the side there. I don't want all that bulk in the bottom because I'm going to have to fold that fabric up and around. I've lined up the first mark. I'm going to sew on up. that should pull into place. I'm going to snug the sewing up to the sew line here because I don't want it to be showing. Line up the next one, which is there, and sew in a straight line to that mark. As I come in, I'm going to start twisting the fabric on top so that it starts lining up with the outside edge here, and it will form the outside of this arm front. Make sure all the fabric goes in smoothly. This part's a little bit of a slow process as I pull it in. As long as all my marks line up, that's all I worry about. Into place here. I'm going to pull this in line here, the outside edges in line. Where this line comes in, I'm going to do forward and reverse. That's the end of that. As I pull it in, you'll see why I stopped there, because it might go in further and then round, or it might come out here. We'll work that out in a minute. Usually I would take this off, but I've only taken the outside off of here. I'm going to pop this all the way down and over the front there, so it's nice and firm. Bring it around the corner and staple it in place. Cut back where needed and into shape. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to bring this down on top to smooth it out and also secure that. I have another piece of dacron that can go over the top like this, and I'm going to secure this as well. I've cut this into shape at the back and tucked it underneath here. The outside will hold once I've got this pulled into position. Pulling the piping out, set it back against the arm like this, and I'm going to just pull it into place for now. Where I put the piping in, that comes right down on that corner. That's why I didn't put the extra in. I will work out where the edge is that has to go underneath. I'm going to cut that in here. There's still quite a bit of space there. A little bit further so that this can all be pulled through. I'm going to cut a little bit of this off so there's not so much going up and under. I'm going to fold this into position right here because there's nowhere really for it to go. Smooth that out a little bit. Then towards the back. I'm not going to pull it too much towards the back. I want the bottom in first. I'm going to pull the front in here and fold it back so it looks neat. Then I'm going to pull all of this about an inch over and towards the back as I go. This is so that the base of this gets pulled in firmly, and if I'm pulling this along the back, when I come to do the inside, it'll be nice and tight across the bottom and it shouldn't ripple. I'm stopping here because when I pull the back in, this might come down at a slight angle because there's not quite so much foam at the back there. I'm going to feel the way to the top of the bar that's here and cut straight into it. And because there's quite a bit of fabric I don't want, I'm just going to cut that down like that. There's plenty to be folded in when I get there, but I'm just going to push it in to start off with. And another cut around about here so that this piece of fabric can go behind this foam and through to the back. I can make adjustments once it's in place. It's a tight fit, and I can also pull this over the top to make sure that it's quite tight. I'm not sure if you can see the rippling that's going down here, but the whole idea is to keep this and this pattern level going into the back here. And although I've cut some of it, I have a lot more to cut to get into that. Cut towards the top of my hand, pull this into here. Remember that this along the top will be pulled hard over into the top. So what I've got to do is counteract that with pulling that hard down into the bottom. So I need another little snippet, a little bit more off of here because I don't need all of that like that. Fold that under so it goes along the bar there and out to the bottom here. Might need to work that in a little bit more. If I pull that all the way to the back, it will go in nice and even. I think that's almost in. I am going to pull this down and into place, and then all the way up and into place. Fold that and pull that a little bit more into position at the end here so it's nice and tight. This is the bottom of the inside arm. I'm going to pull this and fold that over a little bit more into this corner here, and then pull this. I need to undo these just to pull those in. That's quite normal. The inside of this arm is a little bit narrower than on this side, which is why this needs to come in. I need to move this into place. There's a board that goes here. I will cut cut towards it, not all the way in. There's still quite a bit of movement there. And I am also going to cut towards the other side. That can go through. With the inside back, there is a bar that goes all the way across. I'm going to cut up towards that bar, but not all the way in. Cut quite a bit of that off. I really don't need it in a straight line. Fold over like this and push it into that corner and on through underneath. That will then go through here, and I need to cut this at an angle. The reason I go at an angle is this part here is going to have to be folded and into place, and I don't want to ruin it. It looks smooth. If I pull this out to the side, I can actually cut further in. I don't want to be going too far if I can help it. There's still quite a bit of fabric that can be folded up. I'm going to take it here and in, and then here to the side, another little snippet. This time I'm going out to the corner like I did before, so that that can fold up and under and into place. On this side, I'm just going to pull it into place as tightly as I can. As I pull it in, it will come down just slightly on the end here. Remember to keep that fold in place and pull it as tightly as I can into there. This is where I folded it up from the inside back. Pull that down, secure it. I'm not going to pull it too hard, but I am going to smooth it out here. This is that little piece I pulled out of the top a short while ago. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this yet, so I'm not going to touch it. These ones need to come out because this is going to pull in just a little bit more than I thought it was. I've made another little cut here, so it should go nicely into place. But in the meantime, I am going to pull this as hard as I can towards the back here, like this, and secure it. Before I start, I'm just going to cut some of this back under here to thin it out a little bit. I wanted the extra over the arm because it always gets squashed down over time. By putting another layer of the dacron on, it fills out any spaces that might have occurred from the old cover. Pull that down and into place. I'll bother about that in a minute. Here is the bottom of the frame. I'm going to staple just above there. Pull from the top here, down and into place. Then an infill. Although you're pulling the fabric towards the back, you're actually pulling the fabric down. You're just easing the fabric towards the back so it goes in smoothly like that. You don't want to be too far up with your staples, otherwise you have to remove them when you put the back tacking in place. I've made a few more snips around the back end of here to pull it in, and I've also pulled it up slightly, but not very much. Secure under here, so it doesn't slip, and then pull this in as tight as you can along the back and evenly. If this is too rounded, you'll have to put a pleat or maybe two pleats, but this is actually quite straight, so I'm not going to worry. Might take those two out and see how it looks in a minute as I adjust everything. Cut this back a little bit, doesn't need to have all that under there. Almost to the front. I am going to cut this back here because that certainly doesn't need to be in here. Should have done that before I secured it, but it'd be okay. Cut that back a little bit too. Still got that, not sure what I'm doing with it just yet. I've folded all of this fabric up under the dacron at the front there. I'm going to cut the fabric into this corner, not too far down, just a little bit. That allows it to open up, down and around. Don't worry too much if it wrinkles a little bit on the front. It's hidden by a seat cushion, and I'm going to secure it along here. Coming in at the top here and into place. Cut that extra fabric out. Here's the piping. Pull that back slightly and into place. So the piping front is against the wood. Secure that. That means it goes in quite straight all the way to the bottom here. Cut that little piece off and pull some of that piping out. I don't want too much going underneath. Once that's level with the base, I'm going to cut it. That ensures that when this goes under and this comes across, it's a nice clean finish. And staple that too. Here, make sure that's all folded in. Make sure that's folded in, and that comes in quite tightly at the front, although it's not actually secured there. And staple that in too at the base. can cut this extra fabric out because I don't need it. I've picked this piece of the pattern. I've got the bushes here and the tree, and on the other side the tree was right here, and I didn't want the two trees together. I wanted a little bit of a space between the two. And I'm going to bring this into position. So having decided where my pattern is going, I'm going to pop that over like this and to the back. You will see with the pattern that I've chosen, this part of the treetop and this are almost in line, and that's what I want it to be like, which is why I'm trying to match these base patterns up with what's gone on ahead. They are slightly different because this comes down, but it'll be close enough. Along here I have a generous inch across, which is what I want. The back tacking that I've slipped underneath here runs with the base of the wood frame, and by making sure that the pattern at the bottom matches, I can wriggle the fabric into place, fold it back and staple it where I want it. Fold this down, line it up at the bottom where I want it, fold it into position along the top like that. Push the back tacking into place so it runs along the base of the wood here. Put a little bit of tension on the back of the fabric there so everything stays put. Roll the fabric back with your fingers on top of the back tacking. Push the back tacking hard up against the base there and infill as you go. Once all of that's in place at the front, just roll your fingers along, make sure that it looks nice and even. Pull the fabric back like that, make sure it's secure across the front here and staple it into that front area. At the back here, pull the fabric into the side, flip it back, secure from the outside on in, and then cut the back tacking. You don't need that. Cut back some of the fabric, you don't need all of that there. I am reusing this lining and staple along the back where it came in, along the top to hold it, and along the bottom. Pull the top cover straight down and it should go in quite well. I'm not going to go any further forward because of the back tacking, but I will go backwards. I'm finished straightening these out as best I can. This is the one that was in here. I'm going to reuse it. Fold back that so it's in line with this. Sometimes I use pins, sometimes I don't. That will give a good fold as to where that needs to go. I'm going to measure off the length there to there. That's about right. And I will, from the top, start pushing these through. I'm going to make sure that the side of that fold there is on the side. Make sure that that's a straight line and pop the next one. Mind your fingers, these are horrible. Into place. And I pull it tight as I go. Push the fabric all the way to the back. Everything's pushed into place. Pull that back. Fold this piece of fabric here underneath and that over the top of it. Do that because I want the top to be as straight as I possibly can, and pull that into position like that. I'm making sure that I've got something over the top of the metal. I'm trying to twist it so that the teeth go that way, not by very much, and then I'm going to tap it into place all the way down. I think it twisted too much. Sometimes they take a couple of times to get going in where you want them. You just don't want to be ruining those teeth, because if you do, you've got to start all over again. Lightly tap them to start them off and then go back and hammer them home, and do it again if you need to. Once it's in place, carry on pulling down the side there and securing it. Pop this along here. I'm going to secure that towards the back. With the back, all I'm going to do is bring that round so it looks a little bit smoother. Secure it a little ways in. Cut back here, on, up. Bring it around and down, but not too far. On the corner here, I'm going to just fold it in and bring that down. Secure it. This corner, I'm going to fold across here and back on itself. Might have to go a little further over. It's so that this line comes in straight like that, and it comes into here. So this I will bring back also. It should come more or less along the corner here. I might need to undo that because there's a pleat here and I don't think I want that. It will hide behind the piping that's going on here, so that'll be fine too. Measure the piping down to the bottom there and secure it. Let's take some of that out. It's going along the edge of the wood here, so it's nice and tight. straight as possible. In this corner, I'm going to fold it so that it goes along the top edge of the wood. Just a little bit over, but not too much over. That's going to go all the way around here to the other side.